don't. It's okay, folks. Hi, once again, it's Gary Ryan from Organisations That Matter here on behalf of Monsu Caulfield. Tonight, we've got number 5 in our series of how being a committee member enhances your career prospects. I'm looking forward to this session with you tonight. A brief introduction. We're going to leverage the content from all of the program in tonight's session, including the sessions that haven't happened yet, which might seem a little bit strange, but it will make sense as we get through tonight. And we're going to look at how we can use this information to help you with your careers. First thing we're going to do is go into the Miro board and select one of the frames that I've set up for you for this evening's session. And I want you to think about all of the tasks you do as a committee member. So I'm going to get you to go into the Miro board, select just one of the frames, grab a sticky note, stick your name up the top. Chloe, do you need a hand with the sticky notes to remember how to do all of that, or is that cool?
I know how to do that, so that's all good. Yeah.
Okay, cool, not a problem. So if you jump in there, what we're going to do is just grab one of those frames and then just quite literally as a brain dump, think of what are all the tasks that you've been involved with in your role as a committee member. So think of all of the tasks. Now, there's going to be quite a lot, particularly for you, Chloe, given you set the club up at the start. We'll welcome Sadman as well. Hi, Sadman, you've just come in straight on mute. Thank you for popping in. We've got Chloe with us here this evening as well. There's the link to the Miro board. Sadman, just if you wouldn't mind just unmuting yourself to let me know if you're there. Yep, cool.
Yeah, I'm here.
How are you going? Are you in front of a computer this evening or on your phone?
Yeah, like in front of a computer. Yeah.
Fabulous. So if you go into the Miro board, what we're going to do, if you just pick one of the frames, so you'll see that I've got a set of frames set up. Chloe's grabbed one already. So Sadman, if you wouldn't mind grabbing the one next to Chloe. And we're just looking at all of we just want you to do a brainstorm on the various tasks that you do and think specific tasks that you might do that relate to your role on a club, on your club. So think of what are some of the very specific things that you do. So even Chloe, when you think about running meetings, like really running the meetings is everything from setting the agenda, hosting the meeting, following the agenda, ensuring that minutes are taken, and then obviously sharing those minutes and those sorts of things. There's quite a lot of tasks. If you think of hosting events, again, think of like quite specifically, what are the various tasks that you do that actually are part of that. So for example, that would be everything from booking venues through to organising your various guest speakers, if you've got guest speakers or acts or whatever the case may be. So be as specific as you can with the various tasks. Same for you, Sadman. And how many years have you been on the club, Sadman?
Like not even a year. It's like 6 months. I joined this year.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you've been involved with this year?
Like I'm actually a graphic designer, so I like work with designs and everything. But and also like I have recently, like it's been just a week, I was appointed to another club as a assistant secretary. So I'm doing some secretarial works as well very recently. Okay, and so are you aware of what some of that secretarial work's going to involve, for example? Yeah, something like I need to take the minutes. I need to like send people, like send the team members like agenda before a meeting and everything. Yeah. Okay. So if you wouldn't mind grabbing some sticky notes and adding some sticky notes to the Miro board, please, just as Chloe is doing. And both of you feel free to go. I'm not sure if this is something that I should be adding or not. If at any stage you're not sure, but I'm expecting that it's going to end up with quite a lot on each of these boards when you really think through what is it that you're actually
what you actually have to do as a member of a club committee to help the club function. And you can cheat off each other if you see something on someone else's board that relates to what you do, then that's fine as well. Oh, we've got Alina coming in as well. Hi, Alina, how are you going? I'll just give you the link to the Miro board that we're using this evening. Sadman and Alina, you'll notice too that on to the right of the top row is a resource frame that I've set up that's got all of the links to the YouTube videos for the other 4 sessions that we've already run in this series as well. So you've got them all in one spot. So Alina, if you wouldn't mind going onto the Miro board here, just let me know, Alina, if I need you to show you how to get yourself around. So feel free to unmute yourself to let me know if that's the case. And you'll notice that Chloe and Sadman have set up one of those sheets that I've set up for you. If you wouldn't mind grabbing or going to the one to the right of Sadman's, please, and adding your name. And what we're doing is just in relation to your role on the club committee and your experience with the club committee, what are the various tasks that you're involved with doing? And we're asking you to be quite granular. So go to like the really low level of tasks. So if it's, you know, during the very brief period this year when we could do some things in person, it might have involved actually physically booking a room, for example, you know, those sorts of granular tasks. And you can have a look at what's going on the other boards as well to get a bit of a sense. So making contact with industry professionals, and even thinking about with that one, Chloe, like what are some of the like, how did you know who they were and where to find them? How did you know that they were the ones? What were some of the tasks that you had to do to even find out who the industry professionals were to make contact with? As you got preparing your running sheets, hosting panel discussions, brief event for promotion. Think about things that you might be doing to recruit members, folks. So think about those things. What are some of the specific tasks you do to actually get members to join? And then when they do join, how do they officially become a member? Like who is that a task that any of you are actually doing? Some of those administrative tasks, for example. Again, feel free to unmute yourselves at any time. Now, given your clubs may be incorporated associations, is that the case for any of you, that they're actually a legal entity in your own right?
I think so. I think it falls under Monsu.
Okay, so if you're, because it could fall under Monsu, or it might not. And if it's an incorporated association in its own right, there's actually a whole range of legal accounting principles that you have to follow that are necessary for your club to maintain its legal status. So there's a whole bunch of laws and accounting practices that have to be followed. Now, even if it is through Monsu, those laws and practices apply to Monsu. So think of things like your bookkeeping and your accounts and how you manage things like that. If you have a bank account, someone has to manage the bank account and check the statement and reconcile it against your expenses and income and those sorts of things, and providing receipts to members when they spend money with your various events. Like how does all that financial administration occur? And because they're a set of tasks too. As you would already know, folks, your clubs don't just exist through thin air alone. There's a lot of work that goes on in the background. Social media accounts, okay. Sadman, even like naming which social media accounts they might be, for example, is it just Instagram? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn, what are the various social media accounts that you could actually add to that example there? Alina, communicating with teachers for classes. Okay, communicating with Monsu and yep, okay, organizing and prepping for events, setting a timeline, setting up meetings. So some of the things, or even when you're setting up some of the meetings, is it you're having to manage calendars? How are you doing that? Are you using some online tools for that, like for those specific tasks? So you create posts for your social media accounts. Again, which social media accounts are you doing that, Alina, on behalf of your club? So interview speakers for events. So Sadman, are you effectively acting as a master of ceremonies? Is that the role that you're doing? So it's sort of master of ceremony type roles?
So basically, like TEDx has like as you know, have speakers for their events. So because there are way too many speakers like applicants, and we need to choose like 5 of them. So we are also assigned to actually interview them on a specific criteria that is given to us.
Right. Oh, so this is prior to the events when you interview them. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Like for instance, we have a main event coming in October, and so we are already prepping for it.
Okay, so it's like you're interviewing the speakers for selection. In fact, you're actually acting as a gatekeeper, so to speak, in some respects as well for the club. These are pretty high level roles. This is why we're doing this. This is terrific. At the actual TEDx events themselves, do you introduce the speakers?
Yes.
Okay.
We do. Like I have done it before. I also given like we are also like allowed to give speeches and everything. So I also took up the stage once.
Yeah.
Even though it was virtual. Yeah.
Okay. So that is actually like a master of ceremony type skill set as well.
Yeah. Also, I think it's like hosting not hosting, like I'm not sure how like the proper word or phrasing for this. Like what do you call it? Like the task of an event host.
Ask that question again, please.
Like what do you call like the task of an events host? Like the anchors. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a master of ceremony.
That's called the master of ceremony.
Yeah, so it's often phrased as MC, master of ceremony, and MC. I'll pop that in the chat just so that's my accents covered there. So you'll often hear about someone being an MC for an event. Well, that's MC stands for master of ceremony. They're the person that introduces, acts often as a theme weaver, and usually would close the event and make sure it sticks to the schedule. So there's quite a lot going on in that sort of role. And of course, you cannot be a master of ceremony without doing some form of public speaking. So public speaking is a task and skill set that is required for that role. There we go. Chloe's definitely got that one down pat there. All right. So what we've been getting you to think about right now is the specific tasks that you do as part of your clubs. And then what we'll do is we want to get you to think about categorizing. So if you're looking just in the Zoom for a moment, so there's everything from, well, okay, we've got categories for administration, we've got meetings. Some of you have jumped straight to the category, facilitation, event organizing, strategics. So there's the strategic category of future proofing and succession planning. So for example, Chloe, you've put your heart and soul into your club. You're coming up towards graduation at the end of this year. I assume you've been thinking about making sure that the club continues beyond you being there. Well, that's about succession planning. Like, these are really quite high level strategic tasks that you're actually having to do in your role on the committee, which are going to create some great stories for you with your interview later this week, okay, which is what we want to help prepare you for. So elections, you have elections. So there's tasks that are specific to your being able to host elections and being able to do them with integrity. The recruiting process you have for both members and committee members, they are sets of categories of skills. You've got your networking, that you can't possibly run a successful club without having significant networking going on through your membership of your committee. And hopefully everyone in the committee is helping with that. Public speaking, we've just spoken about. You've got your technology skills, which have significantly been enhanced throughout this year, or actually the last year and a half, I should say, because so much, nearly everything that we've had to do at different times is being via technology. Now, communications, so your use of the email distribution systems and messages, the EDMs, Instagram, LinkedIn, other social media platforms that you've been identifying, and fundamentally the holistic communication that you're doing for your club, because no doubt you've been communicating regularly with your members, letting them know about what's going on, letting them know that you don't know what's going on, but you're still letting them know that, for example. But this is what we're controlling, and this is what we can do in the meantime. And please keep your eye out for all these things in the future that may occur if we're able to see you in person. So these are some categories. So what I wouldn't mind you doing is maybe change the color code. So use a color code that works for you. I don't have to tell you which one to do, but use a color code on the Miro board to think, okay, what are the categories of tasks that I might be actually putting together? And these are just some ideas that I've presented on the screen for you. So think about when we're actually doing tasks together, what sort of categories? So we said things like meeting management, but it's not just hosting a meeting. To do it properly when you're running a club, there's quite a lot to it. You've got to organize your agenda. You need to go through some decision-making process, right? So I'm not sure that any of you had mentioned your decision-making skills, okay, and how important they are. So there's so many levels of decision-making that goes on within the club. There's decision-making as it relates to your role. There's decision-making relating to meetings and content and deciding to contribute and all of those sorts of things. Have a look at Alina here. Just checking on how you're going. So I see you've been doing some video editing as well. What would be some categories for you, Alina, that might match the skills that you've been doing? So you've got communication there. So feel free, if you don't know how to do this, if you click on something in this section, folks, it's okay if you duplicate some of your existing sticky notes. To duplicate one, all you need to do is click on it, then use Control-C to copy, and then Control-V to paste. As you've been seeing as well, if you do click on it so it gets that little frame on the outside of it, you'll get the option to change the color of the sticky note. Yeah, yep, go Sadman, please.
Sorry, can we get the categories back again?
Yeah, sure. These are just suggested categories. It's not all of them.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Okay. So when you think of everything that relates to the maintenance of your membership database, making sure it's up to date, those sorts of back-end tasks, they're really together collectively part of your administration set of skills, which we're going to talk about competencies in a second. And what I'm trying to do is, even though we've gone reasonably granular, I'm keen to help you to recognize ultimately not only the tasks that you do, the skills that you're therefore developing, but the competencies that you're developing as a result of the work that you've been doing within your clubs, including over this last year and a half. And for those of you like Sadman that have come on board this year and got a very recent extra role within the committee, is there any that aren't there that some of you think, maybe I'd like to add this category of tasks? Feel free to make any suggestions if they're not there. So report writing, do any of you do annual reports or anything like that, something similar to that? So that arguably is part of the administration, but equally report writing, I should say, is equally important in its own right as a set of tasks and as a category. So you might do some form of feedback system that's not there as well. So the collection of feedback from members and member surveys and those sorts of things, and participant surveys through the events that you do. So you're getting data. And so therefore we could start talking about data management and how you use data to inform decisions. These are some of the high level things that are actually going on. I know it might not feel like it's high level, but when you think about the next step with your careers, a lot of these tasks that you're doing are going to be extremely relevant for your future jobs. And your awareness that you've actually done them is going to help you sell them to prospective employers. Okay, any other questions so far? I'll just jump back into the Miro board myself. Okay, great work, Alina. All right, cool. Event organizing, recruiting, great work, folks. Event organizing, administration. Building up database, alumni. Okay, wow. That's, Chloe, that's terrific. You know, you could call that as a category alumni relations. If you think of universities, for example, they have whole areas called alumni relations, right? Now, in the USA, alumni's relations also then extends to donations. Now, I don't know if you've actually used your alumni relations at all to actually help get some contribution to the funds of the club. Is that?
Our alumni contribute generously with their time, but not with their money at this point.
Okay, but that generous contribution with their time is an example of in what we would term in-kind support for the club. It actually does have a financial value.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
So yeah, coming to speak at events and yeah.
Yes, that's right. So their time's worth something, and you haven't had to pay someone to do that. So it's kept the money in your bank, for example. So even just understanding that it's in kind provision through the alumni, which is actually helping the financial position of the club, potentially is language and understanding for a future employer to understand that you actually understand that that's how these things hang together.
Yeah.
That financial management isn't just about spending money and receiving money. There's more to it, like getting in-kind services. Okay. And how that might even potentially lead to some in-kind services or benefits to members that alumni are providing, for example, or, none of you have mentioned sponsorship there at the minute, for example. So I don't know if any of you, that's a specific role that you've had over time. I'm just going to extend your box there for you, Chloe. I've just made that a little bit bigger. So is that relevant for any of you? Have any of you gone and got any form of sponsorship? Because it's not an easy thing to do. So if you've successfully got some sponsorship funds into your club, that's kudos to you, right? That is a big win.
We've had sponsors supplying not so much funds, but goods that we've then distributed to members. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, value. Yeah, there's value for those goods, right?
Yeah.
It'd be, and arguably you can calculate the retail. You're allowed to calculate the retail value of those goods, even though they would have given them to you at wholesale rates, really.
Yeah.
But if you had to buy them from a retail perspective, you're actually allowed to quote that that's the true value. So, again, thinking like that and understanding that, that's the value of the benefit you've given your members through the sponsorship work. Okay. So that skill set's really important. All right. Alina, feel free to use the chat function or unmute yourself if you've got any questions for me. Sadman, you're going along well there. Okay. All right. Cool. Let's keep going. So these sets of skills or these category skills you can add to LinkedIn. Now, we've got the session next week, session number 7 around LinkedIn. If you've not really used LinkedIn a hell of a lot, I really encourage you to come along to that session. It is, no matter what your club's area of focus is, from a professional perspective, it has a great deal of value. Now, I know some of you are involved in the arts, okay, with your clubs, and you might say, well, what's the arts got to do with, say, a professional social platform like LinkedIn? Well, the people who go and watch the arts and pay to see the arts are professional people who live on LinkedIn. That's the reason. Like, if for no other reason, you might need other networks specifically for your career perspective, but from a promotional perspective, and you will be surprised at how many folk are on LinkedIn from the arts, certainly from a resume, and it's going to help take your storytelling to the next level. Now, sometimes there's a bit of confusion around skills and competencies. So sets of skills form a competency. That's the bottom line. A set of skills form a competency. So if you can kick a ball into a goal at a local park, does that mean you're a competent footballer? And when I say footballer in this context, I mean world football. So would it? No, it means you can kick a ball into a goal in a local park. It means you've got enough skill to do that, but it doesn't mean you've got a competency to play world football, because that requires a whole bunch of skills put together. Okay, so it's your competencies that is part of the categorization process that you're building. So what are the competencies that emerge? We've got administrator, manager, leader. So you can actually call yourself a leader because of the whole set of competencies that you're putting together. Event manager, communicator. So I'm a competent communicator because I've run meetings, I do written communication, I MC events, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The range of things that you can claim for that competency. No worries, you're welcome. You're allowed to eat your lunch, okay? So what we want to be able to do is put these competencies into your storytelling. So in session 1, we went through the STAR, CAR, and PAR techniques for telling stories about your employability skills. Now, clearly, all of these tasks, skills, and then competencies that we've identified so far with the work that you've done can all be related back to those big 9 employability skills, and you'll be able to tell stories specifically to them. When you get the opportunity to talk about a competency, a high level set, so I'm actually, you know, in Chloe, in your case, the story of setting up the club and then getting to the point to transition it to succession. So you mentioned you're not the current president. So you've already gone through that succession process. So you've actually set it up so that you'll be able to become an alumni yourself and support the club that way without having to be necessarily deeply involved with the club's running. And to have got all of that set up, especially over the past 18 months and all of the challenges that have come with that, is an enormously powerful story about your leadership, your strategic thinking, and your ability to not just focus on today, but to focus on the future at the same time. Does that all make sense? You're taking some notes, it looks like. Yes. Right. So with storytelling, is to take our storytelling to the next level is we start the story with a time marker. Now, when every single person on this call was little, irrespective of the language that was used, how was stories started when we were little and we were going to bed, if we were lucky enough to have parents or older folk around us, guardians, etc., tell us a bedtime story? How did they start the story?
Once upon a time.
Correct. Now, please, with your stories like this, don't start with once upon a time, because people will look at you funny. But actually, as we've grown up, our brains have got used to the time marker set by once upon a time. So when you tell someone else a story, You don't need to, you certainly don't want to start with once upon a time, but if you give them a time marker, their brain will know a story is coming. So you don't have to say, I'm going to tell you a story. Just say yesterday, just say this morning, just say in November 2019, etc., etc. Now you can also use a future time marker. In March 2022, I'm going to be so happy because on you go with your story. Okay, so time markers can be future based. The best stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Pretty straightforward. So any story we tell wants to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Use connectors in your stories. If you think about the stories that we all got used to and still read today, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. It's actually generally described in a linear pathway as we progress from a point in the story forward. Okay, they're the easiest stories to understand that our brains are designed to be able to recognize, because that's how stories were told to us when we were little and growing up. Okay, you can certainly make stories a lot more complex, and filmmakers and theatre directors all do that, of course. And great TV series on Netflix, etc., do it and then capture us. But usually we don't have very long to tell these stories when we're going to use them for interviews. So we want to follow this simple structure. One of the most powerful ways to get the listeners of your stories to visualize your story is to use dialogue. Now, you may only need to use one word of dialogue to assist in this practice. We climbed to the top of the mountain and we looked, and she said, wow. In all honesty, how many of you were just at the top of a mountain, imagining two people together, and one of them, who was a she, said, wow. That's that simple, right? So when you're preparing your stories, if you can find some powerful dialogue, I said, she said, they said, he said, whatever the case, use it in your story. And it doesn't have to be much. Don't overdo it. Just a little bit of dialogue in your story about what actually happened is very, very powerful for the listener to create a video, a clear video in their head of your story, which means they're following your story. This is extremely powerful. Now, of course, your story must have a point. If you're wanting to use these stories, particularly for future interviews, in this instance, I'm encouraging your stories to be able to demonstrate a specific competency that you can demonstrate you've developed that's going to be relevant for this role and the future of being in that organization. Okay, so we want to link the two. How long do you think your stories could be? What's the time frame? How long have you got?
Like a minute? It depends, I guess, on the format.
Yeah, look, as an absolute maximum, 3 minutes. Short is better if you can, but absolute maximum 3 minutes. Sometimes when you're telling a longer story, a really powerful technique is to actually involve your audience in the telling of the story. Would you like to know how to do that? What you do is you'll set up your time marker and you start doing your beginning into the middle. You're using those connectors. This happened. And when you say something like, and what do you think happened next? You'll be amazed how many times your audience will get what happened next accurately. Now, of course, you need to have been getting some body language feedback while you're telling the story. People leaning in, for example, if you can see close enough, their pupils dilating, are signs actually that they're following your story and are engaged with it. So then you can actually use them. Or you could say at the appropriate time, and what do you think they said? you know, and you'll be, again, they'll say something. It might not be exactly what they said. And you say, oh, that was really close. What they actually said was, and then you keep moving. And those really subtle, simple techniques are very powerful at drawing your audience in and getting them to be a participant in your story. And you would use those techniques when they're longer stories, of course. Okay. So that's one of the, if you've got a story that's long. So let's have a go. What we're going to ask you to do is I'm going to load the presentation onto the Miro board. So you're going to have it all there. So I'm going to load that up now. So you'll have that page, right? What I want you to do is just pick one of your competencies or categories of tasks, if you prefer to look at it that way, and see if you can come up with a story that's real and true, but we're going to use this format of the time marker, the connectors to help us move from the beginning, the middle, and the end. Now, in this case, the end ought to be some form of outcome or result that you've achieved. And if we can, we want to include some dialogue, okay? We want to include a little bit of dialogue, even if it's just one word that relates to a competency that you've developed. So if you've got leadership there, that's going to be everything from making things happen to resolving some maybe people type challenges or problems, for example, that you may have had to deal with over time. Grabbing this now. So that's just loading into the Miro board. Now it's going to sit above the first frame on the top row. I'm going to pop it there. Let's grab it. There we go. So if you click on that, you'll be able to click on the download button. So we'll just give you a few moments now and feel free to ask me some questions, just leveraging the information you've put on each of your frames on the Miro board. What could be a story that you could quickly craft together using that structure of storytelling? So I'm just going to give you a few minutes just to, and obviously Chloe, given you've got the interview coming up, you might want to select something that you think is going to be really relevant for that. And of course, Alina and Sadman, you might be some time away from having interviews, but being aware of this and preparing some now, very similar to what we discussed in the first session of this program, is going to help you be really well prepared without having to rush or panic when it does come your turn to be out there job hunting. And I'm really passionate about the fact that so many of you who do this great work of being involved with your clubs, including coming along to these sessions. Remember, I mentioned for those of you that have traveled the whole journey with us, your willingness to give up your time to attend these sessions when you don't have to is an example of your attitude toward your professional development, right? You do not have to be here, but you are. That is a really potentially powerful message to share with prospective employers in the future, that throughout your time, you have deliberately given up your time to participate in these sorts of events. Sadman, you've got a question? Sadman, I'll get you to just
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Like I wanted to you to check the message I sent you.
You wanted to check?
I wanted you to check my message. I have sent you for a while now.
Okay. Oh, you sent me a message?
Yeah.
In the chat?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine, Sadman. That's absolutely fine. You have to do what you got to do. That's fine. Thanks for coming along.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. Now, Lena, just checking if you're going okay.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of a point to talk about.
Okay. So how long have you been in the club, Elena?
Made last year, mid second sem.
Okay. So it's about a year now.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to get with your event organizing anything that actually happened in person?
Last sem last year I was part of the creative team and I helped edited some videos, and I also posted on social medias. And then this year I was made president.
Okay.
But because of COVID, we couldn't really organize anything. So the only thing that I had kind of organized was during a week in first sem.
Okay.
Yeah, but because I was stuck in Malaysia, so
Yep.
I couldn't actually physically be at Melbourne to help out. Yeah.
So you're in Malaysia right now, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. And despite that, you're still involved with the club.
Yes.
Yes. So, for example, how many committee meetings would have you had over this year?
I think we had 4 or 5.
Okay. So, and maybe the focus has been about maybe pressing pause on activities, but still the aim is to keep the club alive so that when obviously international students can get back on campus, hopefully in 2022, the club still exists, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a possible story just in that that's pretty cool in terms of, you're so far away from Melbourne and yet you're still involved, and you could have easily just said, oh, it's too hard, but you didn't. So there's a story in there potentially about your resilience as it relates. Okay. Yep. Chloe, how are you going? Have you got something you're ready to try and share?
Yeah, sure.
Let's go for it.
So you want me to share it? Yep.
If you're happy to. Yeah, if you're happy to. Good practice.
Good practice, my interview. All right, I'll do my best, everyone. Okay. So in 2018, I established the Monash Art Design Architecture Student Society to foster a greater sense of community and connection amongst the students at MATA. And one of the events that we heard that our student cohort really wanted to happen was a ball. And as a first-year club, many people told us that this was beyond our wildest dreams, that there was absolutely no way that we could host an event of this scale. However, we were a small yet determined club, and we managed to host an event with over 200 people in attendance in our very first year. One of the highlights for me personally was when one of our members, an international student, came up and told me that to her, the MATA Student Society felt like a family of creatives in Australia. So that's my little meaningful story.
Okay, that is awesome. Well done. Did you realise that you had multiple dialogues in there, Chloe?
I was aiming for one at the end, but I think it just, as the way I told it, maybe there was a bit more in there.
Yeah. Elena, did you pick up on when there was the really early dialogue? And this is the power of dialogue, by the way. In fact, you naturally threw dialogue in there without... Okay, I'll tell you the piece in a sec. I'll just give Elena a chance if you picked up on it. And if you didn't, Elena, that's fine. Did you notice Chloe's dialogue at the very start?
No, I was just listening to her telling the whole story. I didn't really focus on the dialogue.
Okay, that's fine. When you said, people at the start said, it's beyond your dreams, there's no way you'll be able to do this. Now, that was actually dialogue because people said that to you. And it was, you recall hearing it so clearly that you didn't even realize it was dialogue, but it was. Okay. Yeah. And then, of course, when you added in the piece of the international student at the end, is absolutely gold. Now, one of the things to think about with that, say for a future job opportunity, is, so what does that mean about the person, in this case you, that they were going to get from a story like that? What's the key message about that?
Because I think there's probably a couple of things you could draw out from that. I guess one is like having initiative.
Yes.
So to start something off, being determined as well. So even when other people were saying like, no, like don't do that, like you're not going to be able to do it. And I guess like a third thing that you could perhaps pull out of it would be about like community and connection, and like why that's a really strong personal value of mine. So like see all of these like 200 people all in a room, like getting to know each other and having a great time, like that for me was like hugely fulfilling.
Oh yeah, that's so, your initiative, your determination, as you said, the community connection, the connection to your personal values. There are absolutely so many varieties to where that story could be relevant. Okay, so there's possibly 10 different questions in an interview where that story is going to make sense. You just focus on that the theme of the question, and tell them it's effectively still the same story, but you're making sure you make that connection. So, you might start, well, look, one of my values is demonstrated by back in 2018, I could see a need for da-da-da-da-da, and off you go.
Yeah. Okay,
tell the same story. Determination and not being, it's not about being, some people would describe it as pig-headed,
or stubborn, yeah.
but you know what? There's a degree in the work. I do a lot of work with successful people, Chloe. There is a degree of stubbornness is actually required by successful people. Nelson Mandela was unbelievably stubborn. Mother Teresa was unbelievably stubborn. The list of people like that, but they could also, stubbornness didn't mean they were rude. Stubbornness didn't mean that they never listened to anybody else. It was stubbornness to the things that really matter, if that makes sense. And so bringing people in connect, I mean, right now in the world, how important is what you have done and created been in the last 18 months? You had no idea in 2018. And maybe you've never even thought too much about this, Chloe, but when you think about the fact that you created a club that has existed through this pandemic and enabled students with that similar passion to be connected with each other and just have someone like-minded to hang with online or whatever the case may be, and still have the events that you've put on online and physically, that's actually a fair legacy, really. And to be young and have created a legacy. I know that word might feel a bit daunting at the moment and a bit heavy even, but that's actually, it's not untrue to say. And I know you might not necessarily want to speak like that in an interview potentially, but you could actually quote someone like me as having said that to you.
Bit of dialogue, perhaps.
Yeah, dialogue, correct, exactly right. Now there will be many examples along those lines. Thank you, Chloe. Alina, did you have something you wanted to have a go at?
No, not really. I'm still trying to digest everything.
That's fine. So tonight's session's been recorded, so you can take some time to do it. Again, this leverages really closely with the first session when we talk about the big 9 employability skills and how you can relate these various tasks. I'll be downloading this Miro board and sharing it with Kieran to send back to you all. In fact, I'll be able to send it back as part of this meeting. I'll be able to reply to you, those of you that have attended tonight with that, to give you that as soon as possible. I'll just wrap up what we've got here. So next session is on Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. This is about how to establish role clarity for your various committee members. And I'll be showing you a format that's applicable for committee members and also applicable absolutely through any role that you do in your life. And when you get a role in a job, following this methodology is going to help you have absolute clarity about what your job is, so you can be as successful as possible right from day one. It's going to teach you, in fact, the sorts of questions you could be asking the people that you're reporting to help you achieve that success if they don't give you this information in the first place. This is above and beyond position descriptions. It doesn't replace them, but it's a lot more practical than what most position descriptions are. So it's going to help you with that. You'll have that clear framework. You've got the information for Zoom there. And just keep an eye out, though. Tonight, for some strange reason, the Zoom system rejected the setting that I'd set up. So I've got to go and check the future ones as well. You would have noted I'd sent you an update invitation with a new link to it for this evening. I'm going to go and check the ones that are coming up in the programs. I'm not sure why Zoom decided to have a hissy fit and and do that to us tonight. So once again, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you use that tool. That will be useful, very useful. If you haven't set up LinkedIn for the 7th session in this program, to have set it up and already connected with me prior to that session, you'll find that will be very, very useful to really fully leverage that session for yourselves then. So once again, thanks a lot for coming along. I'll stop the recording and we'll pop that onto the YouTube channel as well. Thanks a lot. We'll look forward to working with you next time.